I have a lot of concerns about this. First of all, I choose to live in an HOA because I don't want weeds and junky cars in my neighborhood. I'll drive through my neighborhood prior to the HOA and I get a little bummed because I'm like, oh, those cars are sitting there. But then I remind myself, like, people have property rights. And it's not for me to infringe my, like, I guess, pristine look that I want onto others. So that's why I choose to live in an HOA. A lot of people choose not to live in an HOA because they don't want to be told what to do. And I think especially living here in Idaho, that's a slippery slope when it comes to property rights. That's like the first concern. The second concern is, since we don't have code enforcement, and maybe I'm mistaken, but then it sounds like since we don't have code enforcement, then who would enforce this would have to come from the sheriff's department. So then are we now spending money on the sheriff's department to like go after people with weeds in their yard versus crime? Since that seems to be also, like, we're so concerned about the crime happening in Hayden, which I don't really think there's a lot of crime, but just going back to that. So if we don't have code enforcement, is it the sheriff? And are we now spending money and time having our sheriff go after people with weeds and cars? There's that point. And then the other point is, going back to like what Summer had brought up, what is the why? I'm always like, why is this happening? I work with children, so there's always a why behind the behavior. Is that person not doing it because of their mental state? I think about when my mom passed away, probably for 6 months, I couldn't even hardly shower. So I think to myself, if this was me, and I got like this notice in the mail, like, your weeds were overgrown, and then in 6 months, I'm going through this trauma in my family, not being able to come up for air. Like, what is the why? I think we're a small enough community to where it's like, let's pull together and find out the why and try and support them. And then if it's a case, because I get it, there's gonna be some people who are like, F you, I don't care, I'm gonna do it anyways. Kind of flip side is, that's their right as property owners and that property rights. And then the excessiveness of like a fine and jail time. And I hear what Dawn is saying, like, that's not the intention, and I get it. And maybe the city council and maybe the city people right here in this room, it's not the intention to do the jail time or the $2,000 fine. But the problem is, as we know, when you put something like this in writing, that could be the result. So to me, it's not a safeguard saying like, well, we don't want them to do jail. Well, then if that's the case, let's take that language out. That is just completely ridiculous. And also that fine amount is ridiculous when people are just struggling to buy groceries and then to loom over that fine. So I think it's a slippery slope, and I'm just super disappointed that this was even brought up, especially with our town. It kind of feels like a California thing, and that's where I came from. And it's like, wow, I never thought that I would see that here in Hayden.
Thank you.